All right, let's just dive right in, shall we? We're going to uncover the story of swimwear. And let me tell you, it's a story that's way less about just fashion and way more about rebellion, technology, and some pretty dramatic shifts in what we as a society decide is, well, okay to show.
Because believe it or not, that little piece of fabric you throw on for the beach or the pool, it's basically a time capsule. It tells a much bigger story about modesty, freedom, and even things like wartime rationing. Honestly, the story of the swimsuit is kind of the story of us.
I mean, just look at this. The difference is night and day, right? On one side, you've got a 19th century bathing gown. It's made of heavy wool, and its job was literally to hide a woman's body and weigh her down. And on the other, a modern bikini. It's lightweight, it's practical, it's made for actually, swimming. The journey from that dress to this bikini is absolutely wild.
So, how in the world did we end up with those ridiculous wool dresses? To get it, we have to go way, way back to a time when things were a lot simpler.
For centuries, we're talking Roman times, all through the Middle Ages, people just swam nude, or maybe with a simple loincloth. No big deal. But then, as we creep into the 18th and especially the 19th centuries, this huge cultural shift towards extreme modesty just takes over. And that's when the bathing gown is born. Its entire purpose was to hide the body.
And this is how extreme it got. They literally sewed weights into the hems of these dresses. Why? To make sure the dress wouldn't float up in the water and, heaven forbid, reveal a woman's legs. Can you even imagine trying to swim in that? It wasn't just impractical, it was downright dangerous.
Okay, so something had to give, right? This era of insane restriction couldn't last forever, and it didn't. It just took one athlete's act of rebellion to start unraveling the whole thing.
So let's set the scene. It's 1907. An Australian swimmer, a woman named Annette Kellerman, shows up in the US. At that point, if you were a woman who wanted to swim, you had to wear this crazy outfit, a full dress, and usually stockings too. It was almost impossible to actually compete.
But Annette Kellerman? Yeah, she was not having any of that. She advocated for this form-fitting one-piece suit, a lot like what the men were wearing, and you can see the impact it had right here. It was scandalous at first, but just over a decade later, you have magazines like Harper's Bazaar calling it daringly beautiful and refined. But getting to that point was a major fight. And here's the kicker. The first time Kellerman wore her one-piece on a Boston beach, she was arrested. Instantly. For indecency. But the public outrage over her arrest is what actually helped make the style popular. Suddenly, people started thinking, hey, maybe women should be able to, actually swim in their swimwear. Kellerman's stand really lit a fuse. The change started happening fast. By 1912, women's swimming is in the Olympics. By 1915, we officially have the term swimsuit. And then, in 1919, history repeats itself. Another swimmer gets arrested, this time just for taking off her stockings. The public sided with her, and just like that, another ridiculous rule was gone. The tide was turning, for sure. So, you'd think the next big leap would come from a fashion designer, right? Nope. It came from something completely different and totally unexpected. A world war.
10%? What on earth could 10% have to do with the history of swimsuits?
Well, during World War II, the U.S. government put out an order. It demanded a 10% reduction in the fabric used to make women's swimsuits. All those materials, like cotton and nylon, were desperately needed for things like parachutes and uniforms, so clothing on the home front had to get smaller.
And the result of this? It was a total accident. Swimsuit makers looked at their designs and thought, well, the easiest way to use less fabric is to just cut out the middle. And just like that, the two-piece suit was born. Not as a fashion statement, but out of patriotic duty. It completely paved the way for what came next. With the two-piece now a normal thing, the stage was officially set for what is still the most iconic, and at the time, the most scandalous swimsuit in history.
So it's 1946, right after the war ends. A French designer creates a swimsuit that's so tiny, he names it after the Bikini Atoll, the place where the U.S. was testing atomic bombs. He predicted his little creation would have a cultural impact that was just as explosive. And boy, was he right.
The bikini was an instant controversy. It was banned from beauty pageants. A lot of places considered it completely indecent. But then, film stars in Europe, like Brigitte Bardot, started wearing it, and its popularity just exploded. The big turning point, especially in America, was in 1964, when Sports Illustrated put a model in a bikini on its cover. That's what finally made it legitimate.
All right, so from about the mid-century on, the story of swimwear starts to change a bit. It becomes less about scandal and shocking people and much more about incredible advances in technology and new materials.
The story of the fabric alone is amazing. I mean, we went from that heavy, dangerous wool to things like rayon and latex in the 30s, which gave us those classic, form-fitting Hollywood swimsuits. Then, in the 70s, Lycra came along and changed everything. Better fit, better performance, and by the 2000s, you have these crazy high-tech fabrics like Fastskin, designed to copy shark skin to give swimmers a competitive edge.
And in the last few decades, things have really started to branch out. It's not just about one single trend anymore. For women, the tankini became the super popular middle ground. And for men, the trend actually went the other way, away from tiny briefs and towards longer, looser board shorts. It just goes to show you, fashion is a cycle, and there's room for all kinds of styles.
The technology in competitive swimming got so good, it actually became a problem. By 2010, these full-body skin suits were giving swimmers such a massive advantage that the sport's governing body had to step in and ban them. They wanted to make sure the races were about the athletes, not just about who had the best tech. It really makes you wonder where you draw the line.
So from wool gowns designed for modesty to sharkskin suits built for speed, swimwear has always been this perfect mirror, reflecting our values back at us. It's tracked our ideas about modesty, rebellion, patriotism, and technology. And it really makes you wonder, what's next? What will the swimwear of the future say about us?